Hello and welcome to another episode of the AgNext Podcast, where we're always excited to tell you what's next from AgNext. Today we have a special episode, and we are coming to you from Stockmen in the Stockyards, hosted at the National Western Stock Show. And I'm joined by two guest hosts, Dr. Jennifer Martin and Dr. Don Thilmany. Jen and Don, would you please take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Dr. Don Thilmany. I'm a professor in the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics at Colorado State University and get to work with beef markets and beef producers as part of my extension role, both with food systems and community and economic development programs with CSU.
And I am Jennifer Martin. I am an associate professor and extension specialist in the Department of Animal Sciences, and I work to support Colorado's livestock producers and meat processors, not just in Colorado, but across the West.
Great. Thank you both for being here with us today. So today we're going to be speaking with speakers from the Stockmen in the Stockyards event, focusing on key takeaways of the presentation. We're excited to bring this event live to you in your home through our podcast.
We're here at Stockmen in the Stockyards, and we're joined this afternoon by Kenton Ochsner, who is the executive director of the Colorado Beef Council. Kenton, would you mind taking a moment just to introduce yourself?
You bet. Thank you. Kenton Ochsner grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado, on a purebred cow-calf operation. Spent 30 years in agriculture education in Colorado before taking on this role as executive director of the Beef Council almost 2 years ago.
Thanks, Kenton, and thanks for joining us on the podcast. For folks who are just watching the podcast or just listening to the podcast, weren't here for the presentation, would you mind giving us just a high-level overview?
You bet. Spent part of the presentation really talking about some general aspects of the beef checkoff program, what we can spend money on, what we can't spend money on, and really tying that into the programs that we spend money on, either promotion, research, education, information, and really foreign marketing. And so I dove into foreign marketing from a report from the United States Meat Export Federation that they shared with me to share with everybody about where do we market our beef across outside of our border, who are our biggest customers of U.S. beef, and what does that look like, and the value of that per head to the U.S. cattlemen.
Awesome. I think probably this past year might have been, for some consumers, the first time they've talked about exports, and we've begun introducing the vernacular of the export market in the beef industry in just normal everyday conversations, which might be new for beef consumers.
Yeah, a lot of beef consumers don't realize how much we export of our product, and a lot of questions of why do we do that? And the big reason is we export a lot of our beef variety cuts, so our offal products that we don't typically eat here. We export a lot of our, when we get down to the short plate and so forth, we just don't consume that. It's a meat product, but we don't consume that here in the United States. So how do we find value for that for the beef producer? And the value is finding those markets outside of our borders and across the globe. U.S. beef demand, not only here in the United States, but across the globe, is at an all-time high.
Yeah, so we're really fortunate to have such high-quality beef that other countries are appreciative of as well.
Yep, we are.
One thing I thought that you brought up that complements something we talked earlier with Dr. Tyler Cousins about is the role of research. And first on the supply side, on how it's helped for our genetics to improve to the level to be able to take advantage of the strong market demand. But also you gave some compelling stories of how we're also doing some market research that's really allowing us to break into markets. Share again with our audience some of those great stories you shared with the presentation today about where that's really being effective.
You bet. Yeah, through the beef checkoff, we invest both nationally and at state level a lot of money in research. And that research is typically conducted by the staff at National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And that research is widespread from carcass merit to nutritional aspects of beef through all age groups to how do we utilize beef in diets for GLP-1 users. But also the other interesting thing that I talked about today is in Peru, really working with university staff here in the United States, working with staff from USMEF, working with producers and consumers of figuring out how do we utilize a product that they need in Peru, and that's liver, because they are iron deficient And so how do we make that product a more consumable friendly product? And so they are grinding 55% liver with 45% meat and making items like liver burgers, meatballs, etc., just to add to their diets in Peru. And it also utilizes a product that we don't eat a whole lot here in the United States, is beef livers. And so it's a win-win in my mind, but that research really enables us to find those markets and figure out how do we do a better job of selling those products overseas. The short ribs in Asian countries, tongue and cheek in other places, it's just really exciting to see countries kind of say, yes, we'll use those products, and we haven't thought of it that way because they don't have maybe the accessibility to those universities and those types of things to think through, how can we make this product even better than what it already is? Mm-hmm. And how can we make it more consumer friendly? Mm-hmm. Nobody loves to just eat liver. At least I don't.
But a small share of people maybe.
Right. Yeah. If it was a liver burger, I might try
maybe
that.
So. Maybe we've found a new product development pathway for U.S. retailers.
Correct.
One thing you mentioned, Kenton, and I know this is a priority for the Beef Checkoff, is the nutritional value of beef and how maybe in other countries where they can't afford the cuts that we're most used to, they can still benefit from that nutritional value in other cuts that aren't consumed widely in the U.S. And I think as it relates to the consumer, most folks don't realize that demand for the nutritional value of beef in other countries, how much economically it contributes to the overall value of a carcass for profitability of producers. Do you want to chat about that a bit?
Yeah. When you look at all meat and beef variety cuts that are shipped or exported from U.S. beef, we're talking that is a value of almost $400 a head. If we're just looking at beef variety cuts, that's $45 a head. Mm-hmm. And so that's real money mm-hmm. that is coming back. And when we look at today, right now our beef producers, our cow-calf producers are making good money mm-hmm. on a per head basis. Mm-hmm. Our feeders are making pretty good money. Our packers are struggling. Mm-hmm. And projections are that packers will continue to struggle mm-hmm. on the profitability of beef. So when I say $400, that's really money that's going into producers' hands.
Absolutely.
In their pockets.
Yeah.
And that's very beneficial as, labor gets more expensive and equipment and feed and just lease land and water. Every dollar that they can improve in their profit margin is better off for the producers.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind maybe sharing a bit for our folks listening who are less familiar with how do we get beef into Peru? Like how do the Peruvian people understand and have access to information about U.S. beef?
You bet. I'll do my best to answer that.
Yeah.
The organization, United States Meat Export Federation, founded in 1974, I believe. Their job is to really get U.S. Protein products in other countries. That's beef, pork, and lamb. And so they have folks. They have 20 offices across the world, and there's a former CSU grad that works for USMEF, and that's just their job. Is they're trying to create markets across the globe for U.S. beef and beef products.
Absolutely. One thing I would just highlight maybe for our cattle producers who are listening to the podcast, involvement with NCBA is a great way to have access where you can go on an international trip and really see how high valued U.S. beef is in some of these countries. And it changes your perspective completely.
Big time. I had an opportunity through the Colorado Department of Agriculture last fall to go to Taiwan and Korea, South Korea. And went into some Costco's over there and went into some other grocery stores and markets. And just to see the excitement, we were standing in Costco in Taiwan, and the meat market or the meat case is large and larger than I expected it to be. But you see these native Taiwanese people coming in groves to the meat case, buying U.S. beef because they know it's a quality product. They have the choice over there. They can choose Australian beef, Brazilian beef, and other types of beef, but they're choosing U.S. beef.
Absolutely.
And that is a huge success story for us.
Awesome.
Yeah, and Peru and Taiwan are two great examples you did share earlier. But just to give a sense to the listeners of some of the other places you mentioned are very significant markets, including ones that we're actually having challenges navigating right now. I think that was a great summary you gave.
Yeah. China was a huge market for us It still can be, and hopefully we can, powers that be can build some new relationships there. But if China gets back on board, that's adding another $100 per head value to the beef producer.
That's impressive.
If China's on board.
Yeah.
And if we can get into those markets, just for the mere volume that they're going to take.
Right.
And so that's, right now, talking with the USMEF folks, their biggest concern right now is if that happens, because right now they're getting their beef from other countries.
Right.
China is. And so if we can open those markets up to the U.S., are we going to be able to take that market share back?
Right.
But anything that we take back is going to be beneficial to our producers here in the United States.
So are there a couple other emerging markets we should be watching might be coming online to help build our export strength?
Yeah, and some of them aren't as big, but the Middle East, Egypt, could be huge.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a lot of work in South America and in Africa. A lot of countries over there that are really getting into that. It's interesting because as countries are increasing their economies, mm-hmm. and so those folks in those countries have more buying power, they also understand the importance of nutrients in their diets. Mm-hmm. They're willing to spend a little bit more money on good quality beef, and that's coming obviously from the United States. The other part of that is there are products that, again, we don't consume here that we're willing to ship to someplace else that they love over there. And so if we can, in my mind as a beef producer, if I can make money, that's always important, right? But also if we're solving some world problems, mm-hmm. we're solving the nutrient deficiencies that there are across the globe. And that is through U.S. beef. And to me, that's a win. Mm-hmm. And that should make every beef producer in the United States feel really good about the job that they do every single day, even when it's 30 below zero.
Yep. Because
they're helping, getting more people with better nutrients in their diets.
Absolutely. I think that point, I think it's really impressive. It's incredibly, encouraging for beef producers when it is hard, when it's cold and you're calving or you're dealing with whatever stress or tension that you're dealing with that day. Not only are we helping to solve world problems as a beef industry, but they're doing it so well that U.S. beef is the unequivocal best in the entire globe. And that's something that they should take some pride in because the decisions they're making daily allow us to make that claim.
You bet. And again, I think it comes down to everything that we've done over the last 30, 40 years. Research and improvement in genetics, improvements in feeding, everything that we've done, we've done to create a better quality product. Mm-hmm. And that is paying dividends. And I know it's hard, for folks like my dad back in the 80s and early 90s, folks that were around that time, times were tough.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying times aren't tough now for the beef producer, but it's a little bit easier pill to swallow now. Mm-hmm. It's easier to get out of bed in the morning at 2 a.m. and go do those first calf heifer checks.
Yep.
Knowing, and you also have to make sure that you're doing a good job with those because mm-hmm. the value of those calves right now is out, or future value is really, really high. And so trying to really figure out how do we make sure that they're doing everything they can. Our job as a beef council is trying to tell that message to our consumers. Absolutely. And so how do we share the message of the producer? I was with a group of producers a few months ago, and I said, as a beef council, we're really the advocates of the beef industry. Mm-hmm. Our job is to tell your story as a beef producer. Mm-hmm. Make sure consumers know and understand the effort, the work, the technology, everything from breeding and genetics to feeding to getting that product on their plate. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot, and it takes a lot of sacrifice as well. But when you tell consumers that have no experience doing that, they're in awe. They're amazed at what we do as beef producers to provide them with that product.
Absolutely. And what a great place to do it here at the National Western Stock Show, where some of the nation's best beef producers are showcasing their genetics, and consumers from around the metropolitan Denver area and across the country will come here to see cattle. And maybe if you want to chat a bit about the role that the Beef Council has here at Stock Show to help inform and educate consumers.
Yep. So we work closely with CSU Ag Adventure up in the garden level of the Hall of Education. So there's a great new educational display for family friendly and lots of space, and it's painted and new flooring, and it looks great up there. But CSU Ag Adventure up there, and we have a display up there that talks about, number one, we have pictures of different producers on our panels from across the state. We talk about raising cattle, the number of, some facts about the cattle industry in Colorado, what it takes to raise cattle, the difference between grass and grain finished cattle. And then we also talk about the nutrient aspect of beef in your diets as well. We have an opportunity for kids to learn about cuts of meat, the parts of the animal digestive tract, and understand how beef cattle are upcyclers and how they're so good for the environment. When we tell stories on social media about cattle being grazed on the fire lands to help mitigate fire and be part of fire control, that's something that most general public do not understand. The other thing that we've done this year, which is brand new, and I'm super excited about it, we got Merritt Trailers, whose national headquarters is just down the road, to bring in a brand new cattle semi.
Oh, nice.
And so in there, people can walk through there, climb up and walk through and see the compartments of the semi-trailer, how many cattle we put in each one. We talk about beef quality assurance transportation in there and the safety and aspect of how we handle cattle when they're in the trailer and on the road, but also as a consumer, how they can help us do that, keeping distance between them and the trucks, and not cutting trucks off, et cetera. So that's really exciting. Lots of opportunities. I think, the National Western Stock Show enables producers to do a great job, and those of us in agriculture just to do a great job of telling our story. Again, 700,000 visitors here to the stock show on an annual basis. How can we tell that story and make sure that, especially in our state, our consumers know what we're doing and why we're doing it? And we shouldn't be ashamed of that. We have exciting stories to tell, from sustainability and everything else, to be able to share with consumers of what we do.
Yeah. I think this idea of Colorado beef production has local roots, but global impact, right? I think that really highlights, puts a nice tie on the conversation we've had today, while we're talking mainly towards Colorado cattle producers who are here, the folks who are here at Stock Show. The decisions, the work they're doing has impacts far beyond the borders of Colorado.
100%. Yeah. Across the country and across the globe.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So as we wrap the podcast for today, is there any last message you'd like to leave with the audience for today, from what you've either shared today or what you feel like are key points we're talking about where the markets are right now?
The first thing I'd say is beef. It's what's for dinner, breakfast and lunch.
Maybe liver meatballs?
Maybe liver meatballs. No, I think some key points to understand is exports markets are important to the U.S. cattleman. It's $400 a head, and we need to do what we can. As a beef council, we can't do any lobbying and talking to our congressman, but producers can. And trying to get that message out there of saying, how do we make sure we can keep markets open and get new markets engaged? And because that's it's not only on USMEF, but there's also a lot of governmental entities that have to come to play.
And I think the talking point I'm going to take, because I so often talk to the press about inflation, is you would have U.S. consumers saying, why do we need those markets? Our price is already too high. Well, I think you really allowed me to see better is that, but they in an indirect way are keeping prices lower by giving value to parts of the carcass that consumers in the U.S. aren't valuing. It's allowing us to actually give the high quality, high premium value cuts that U.S. consumers want more cost effectively. And I think that's something that's very nuanced and would be lost in the usual conversation. So I know that's what I'm taking home from today's conversation. So thanks for making that so clear.
You bet. Yeah. And we're happy. I have a great job right now. Beef producers happy because cattle prices are at an all-time high. Beef demand is at an all-time high, even with record meat, beef prices. And that's just telling the story again of the quality of product we produce.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You both.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the AgNext Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and Instagram. If you have comments, suggestions, or any feedback that you'd like to give us, please send us an email to agnext.colostate.edu, and we'll do our best to answer you as soon as we can.